What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel, and if you are new here, hit that subscribe button right now because on this channel we do not sleep on Rangers news. And today we have something massive to break down for you. Grab your drink, sit down, and lock in, because the name Matthew Knies is swirling around New York in a way that has every single Rangers fan refreshing their feeds and holding their breath. We are talking about one of the most talked about players in this entire offseason, a young, physical, point-producing machine, and the whispers are getting loud that Chris Drury and the New York Rangers are in the mix to bring him to Madison Square Garden. So let's get into it, all the details, all the context, everything you need to know right now. Let's paint the picture first, because this story didn't come out of nowhere. Matthew Knies has been in the rumor mill since the very last moments of the trade deadline back in March. And I mean literally the last moments, we're talking seconds on the clock. TSN's Darren Dreger dropped the bombshell that the Montreal Canadiens came within 1 minute, one single minute, of landing Matthew Knies from the Toronto Maple Leafs. The paperwork was filed late by 60 seconds. 60 seconds that changed everything. That deal, as Sportsnet's Elliot Friedman and Dave Pagnotta of the fourth period later confirmed, reportedly included prospect winger Alexander Zurovsky, another unnamed prospect, and 2 first-round draft picks going to Toronto. 2 firsts, and it still didn't get done. Think about how insane that is. Think about what that tells you about what kind of player Matthew Knies is, and what kind of return Toronto is going to expect if they actually move him. Now, since then, new Leafs GM John Chayka has taken over in Toronto following one of the most turbulent seasons in that franchise's recent history. And trust me, for Leafs fans, that is saying something. Toronto missed the playoffs for the first time since 2015 to 2016. That's a decade of expectations. A decade of this is the year, completely derailed. And Chayka, the new man in charge, is absolutely not afraid to make bold moves. He's acknowledged publicly that Knies has enormous value on the trade market. He's been doing his due diligence. He's had conversations. But, and this is the key word here, but he also made clear in late June that moving Knies right now would hurt the club in the short term. So Toronto is being patient. They're not shopping him loudly. They're not putting up a neon sign that says for sale. What they're doing is sitting back, waiting for someone to blow their doors off with an offer they genuinely can't refuse. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is actually where the Rangers come in. According to Vincent Z. Mercogliano of The Athletic, the New York Rangers are among a group of teams actively wondering whether Knies is truly available. Let me read you a line from that report. It said, and I'm paraphrasing here, that the Rangers are curious that Knies carries a $7.75 million cap hit through 2031, and at that point he'll only be 28 years old. 28 years old. So you are talking about a player in his absolute prime years who would still be under contract and productive at a very manageable number relative to the cap ceiling, especially with the cap going up. That is a franchise-altering contract. That is the kind of number that makes opposing GMs lose sleep. And let's talk about who Matthew Knies actually is, because if you haven't been watching him, let me put some respect on this man's name. He is 6'3", 232 pounds, and he plays like every single shift is Game 7. He's a power forward in the truest sense of the word. Not one of these guys who they call a power forward because they're big but won't go to the dirty areas. No. Knies throws his body around, he goes to the net, he drives possession with his size, and he still puts up points. This past season he had 66 points in 79 games. 66 points. And he had 29 goals the season before that. He averages, when you stretch it out per 82 games, roughly 27 goals and 65 points. Now look, the analytics guys are going to come at me and say his defensive numbers are rough. And yeah, his 5-on-5 underlying numbers this season were not pretty. But you know what? You put Matthew Knies on a Rangers team that is retooling, that desperately needs an identity, that needs someone who makes the crowd at the Garden rise out of their seats, and you tell me that doesn't change the DNA of this organization overnight. Now here's where this gets even more interesting, because the Rangers are not just passive bystanders in all of this. This offseason has already been extraordinarily active for Chris Drury. They just pulled off a fascinating move by acquiring Pavel Dorofeyev from the Vegas Golden Knights, pouncing on Vegas's cap crunch situation and locking him up for 7 years at $11 million per season. That is a significant move. That shows you Drury is spending, Drury is aggressive, and Drury still has plenty of ammunition. Because even after that deal, the Rangers were working with close to $30 million in cap space. And that number could get even bigger if they successfully move Vincent Trocheck, who has been on the trade block since the deadline and appears to finally be getting some traction toward a deal, reportedly heading to the Utah Mammoth. If that Trocheck move clears the books, suddenly New York has a massive war chest to go after exactly the kind of player Matthew Knies represents. And that is the domino effect that makes this so fascinating. Think about it from Drury's perspective. You lose Trocheck's salary. You now have flexibility. You have young pieces on the roster. You have Gabe Perreault, who is 21 years old and an absolute weapon waiting to fully emerge. You have Alexis Lafreniere, who is 24 and still finding that next level. Now you add a 23-year-old Knies, soon to be 24, who is 6'3", 232, and can play alongside those guys and physically dominate every single night. The Rangers go from a team that is retooling and somewhat undefined to a team that has a core. A legitimate young core that the whole Eastern Conference has to account for. That is not nothing. That is everything when you're trying to build something real. Now, what would a trade package even look like? That's the question everybody is asking. And here is where we have to be honest. Toronto is going to ask for the moon. They have the luxury of time. They have the luxury of a roster that still has Austin Matthews, still has incredible assets, and a GM who is methodical and wants to win immediately. So they are not selling Knies for a discount. Reports have made it clear that Chayka wants a staggering overpay. We're talking about a package that would likely need to include a top young player ready to contribute right now, probably a long-term blue-chip prospect, and draft capital on top of that. For the Rangers, that conversation probably starts with someone like Will Kuehl, although some analysts have questioned whether Kuehl and Knies are redundant enough that this trade doesn't make sense. Others in the Rangers organization might come up in these discussions. Could Braden Schneider be part of a package? Could there be draft picks included, perhaps even connected to what the Rangers extracted from the Door 5 deal structure? These are the chess moves that are happening in war rooms right now. And here's the competitive angle that nobody is talking about enough. The Rangers are not the only team at the table. Darren Dreger already confirmed that multiple NHL executives believe Knies will be traded, and he mentioned that both the Rangers and the Canadiens are among those teams who have expressed interest. Luke Fox of Sportsnet added that the Buffalo Sabres and Chicago Blackhawks are also believed to be in the conversation. So this is not a one-horse race. This is a full-on bidding war in slow motion. Every team that wants to make a splash this offseason, every team that watched the trade deadline and regretted not being more aggressive, is picking up the phone and calling Toronto. And somewhere in those conversations, Chris Drury is making his case that the Rangers are the right destination. Maybe he's dangling the cap space. Maybe he's dangling the young pieces. Maybe he's dangling the Madison Square Garden stage, because let's not kid ourselves, playing at MSG matters to players, it matters to their brand, it matters to their families. What I will say is this: the situation is fluid. As recently as a few weeks ago, Friedman reported that the Canadiens' deal appeared off the table, at least for now. But that doesn't mean the interest from other teams has cooled. If anything, the post-draft market heating up with Dylan Larkin's trade request, with Robertson still available, with the entire center market being thin, means that teams are more hungry than ever for elite wingers. And Knies, for all the analytical debate about his underlying numbers, is one of the most physically imposing young wingers in this league. He's in the 70th percentile for top speed bursts despite carrying that 232-pound frame. Think about that. A giant who can also fly. You simply don't find that combination walking down the street. So where does this leave us? Here is the honest breakdown heading into what is shaping up to be one of the most explosive weeks in recent Rangers history. The Rangers have the cap space, they have the organizational desire to add a young impact player, and they have been specifically named by credible insiders as a team with genuine interest in Knies. Toronto has made it crystal clear they will only deal him for an extraordinary return. The post-July 4th period of the offseason is historically when these bigger trades start to get finalized. Teams are done with their immediate free agency splash, they know their roster holes, and now is when GMs get on the phone and actually push deals through. If this Knies trade is going to happen, the next 7 to 14 days are the window you are watching. Could this fall apart? Absolutely. Maybe Chayka decides the return isn't worth it and keeps Knies as the centerpiece of a rebuild. Maybe another team like the Canadiens swoops in and blows Toronto away with an offer New York simply can't match. Maybe Knies himself has preferences about where he plays and New York isn't top of that list. All of that is possible and we have to keep it real with you. But what I can tell you is this: the pieces are aligned in a way that makes this more than just idle speculation. This is real. This is happening. And if Drury pulls this trigger and brings Matthew Knies to Broadway, the Metropolitan Division just got a whole lot more interesting and the Garden is going to be absolutely electric next October. That is the Knies situation as of right now, and you better believe we are monitoring this around the clock. The moment something breaks, the moment an insider drops the trade alert, we will be here with the full breakdown, the grades, the analysis, all of it. So if you are not subscribed yet, what are you actually doing? Hit that subscribe button, ring the notification bell so you don't miss a single update, and drop in the comments right now. Do you want the Rangers to make this trade? Is Knies the missing piece for this roster? Let's argue about it. That's what the comments are for. Thank you so much for watching, stay locked in, and as always, let's go Rangers.